Hey everyone, thank you again for checking out this video, and I hope you do enjoy the comparison between the Airsoft model versus the Firearm Real Steel model of the Beretta M9. Today's video is going to particularly just target the two and their similarities and of course the differences, but mainly highlighting just how similar an Airsoft replica of an M9 is compared to its real steel counterpart. Now this video is going to just highlight just some of the nuances between the two, and from here it's going to most likely be an education piece as far as differentiating the differences between the two. Offhand, you cannot really tell right now which one is which one is the replica model and which one is the actual real steel firearm. So again, that can also point to be a dangerous issue, given that if if you're outside with an airsoft version of this, it's very difficult for somebody to pinpoint and understand that that is in fact a non-lethal firearm and that it's a replica, it's a fake, essentially a toy, compared to the real thing. And that's where very bad things can and have happened, unfortunately, because of that. So this is just going to be a video of just highlighting how an airsoft gun almost passes off for the real thing visually. So let's just dive into it and just see the comparisons between the two, and we'll go from there. So before we dive into the video and compare the differences, let's go ahead and talk about first what brands we're working with here. So the pistol I have in front of me here is the Airsoft replica of the M9 Beretta. Now this particular Airsoft manufacturer is KJW, or KJ Works. Airsoft pistols are typically going to fire a 6mm plastic round or pellet, and it's going to come in different variations of weight, ranging anywhere from 0.12 grams up until I think 0.35 and even 0.4 for the much more heavier powered Airsoft replicas. Now you can very well tell that with no orange tip on this Airsoft pistol, it looks quite real. And this one is the Blowback Edition, which again, for those of you not familiar with Airsoft, is basically you have your magazine. The magazine is going to be fueled with propane or green gas, and that will enable the Airsoft pistol to mimic a firearm as far as the cycling motion and firing. So again, your safety is up at the top, and the slide will function and catch just like the real thing, and it will cycle through BBs just like the real thing would with actual cartridges. So again, you could tell the differences right away, or I'm sorry, not the differences, you could tell the similarities right away when looking just at the Airsoft counterpart. Okay, and now we are looking at the real steel counterpart, the M9 Beretta, chambered in 9mm Luger. So you can already tell how identical this looks to the Airsoft counterpart, how realistic. Obviously it's a real firearm, and it just kind of tells you how realistic the Airsoft version looks just by looking at the actual real thing. Now, just for the record of the video, the firearm has been cleared and there is no magazine. The firearm is empty. So again, just for the record, in case there's any concern there, where I definitely appreciate it. But again, here's the differences. So visually you can tell, but let's dive into the specifics a little bit more and then really compare the two. Okay, so here are the two side by side. This is the Airsoft model, this is the real steel model. So you can already tell the logos are going to be different. You could tell that the slide finish is different because we're talking about a steel firearm versus a kind of like a metallic alloy. Not sure of the actual metal, but it's a very soft metal that they use for Airsoft gun slides and lower frames, and they use a particular type of metal that cannot withstand real firearm cartridges. So if you were to swap these slides or something like that and use the Airsoft slide on the real steel slide, it would basically explode. So do not try it, it will not work, and I do not recommend doing so at all. But that's the kind of the background as to why Airsoft does not use steel components, is to prevent that issue. Now, again, you could tell that the fronts of the firearm are basically the same. Again, you could just see the difference in shading of the metals, and that's just because steel has a little bit more of a matte finish compared to the glossy finish that's on this metal. And then you can kind of tell on the tops too, you have a steel barrel to the right here versus that again, softer metal that's used on the firearm counterpart. They do both have functioning hammers, so they are going to click and lock back just like they're supposed to. Again, given the replicas, the sights look identical, the overall body, magazine well, again, look identical. So very, very concerning to, you know, a lot of people that might be out there walking around with airsoft guns, and, you know, nobody's going to know that you have an airsoft gun, and they might think you have a real firearm. So you have to be extremely careful and only use airsoft guns in intended areas like airsoft games or regulated areas where you can shoot these, you know, in a controlled environment, so to say. And of course, taking proper precaution using either or is the most important thing. Now, the big difference, of course, without even comparing the two, is going to be the caliber. You have 9mm versus a 6mm. 6mm, again, firing plastic pellets versus 9mm firing the actual cartridge. So, again, big difference between the two there. So next you can get an idea of the magazines. So you could see magazines almost look pretty similar. Of course, there's going to be differences there, since this is the airsoft one, this is the real one. So this kind of gives you a perspective as to what to expect when you're seeing the sizes in millimeters. This is a 6mm, this is a 9mm, and these are actually hollow points, 9mm hollow points. Again, the difference in the mag from the back, you could tell, is pretty different. They're relatively the same size if you're comparing the top of the lip to the top of the cartridge there, but it seems like the actual metal casing on the magazine is taller than the gas magazine counterpart. So you could tell very similar. The weight is similar too when you have a 15-round fully loaded magazine versus a green gas fully loaded magazine. The BBs weigh next to nothing, but it's just the gas reservoir and the metal magazine that make up for the weight to give it that realism, which then adds to the whole story of what's the difference in weight. Well, with a fully loaded gas pistol, it's right at the 2-pound mark, somewhere maybe less than that, but right around 1.5 to 2 pounds. When you're looking at the real steel firearm counterpart, it's relatively the same weight with a fully loaded magazine. So the airsoft model simulates a fully loaded magazine as much as possible, and you could basically tell these are just about a 1-to-1 replica. I think the difference is maybe in millimeters in some areas, if any, but again, that's another major difference between the two, is the caliber and the type of cartridge fired. Now, if we were to perform a field strip, it's going to be very similar. So I'm going to start with the airsoft counterpart, and I will perform a field strip on it just to give you kind of an idea of how that goes. So typically you want to just rack it back. There's a button on the back here that you can click on. You swivel this front piece over, and then the slide comes out. And here's kind of the difference inside as far as the components go for the airsoft model. So very, very different that you're going to notice compared to the actual real steel model. But some of the similarities are going to look pretty unique, and you're going to be quite surprised that it looks almost the same. So here we have the real steel. We're going to just pull the hammer back. Again, the firearm has been cleared, so it does not pose any threat. Same concept here. You're going to click on the button back here, swivel this front over, and the slide comes undone with the lower, just like that. So you can tell, here's the difference there. If I were to share the slides to the right, you're looking at the real firearm. To the left is the airsoft's counterpart. So you could tell the differences right there when you're looking at these. Okay, So now, if you compare the two lowers together, here's the difference. It's almost unrecognizable, you know, to the untrained eye that these are, you know, which one's real, which one's airsoft. So again, just kind of helps flag the similarities between the two even further. Okay, I've also racked the slides back on both of these, and just to also share what it looks like as far as the opening goes. So the opening for the firearm, for the casing to come out, obviously is going to be much wider than the airsoft counterpart for obvious reasons. And then you can see the opening for the BB and or cartridge to go into for both of these models. Of course, looks very different, but otherwise there is nothing too different there as far as these two pistols go. So that's just also kind of another perspective from there.